Oh, 2020, oh, 2020, oh, 2020.
COVID-19,
Oh, 2020, oh, 2020, oh, 2020.
COVID-19.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you for
I,
having me.
I am Stefan. My fellow Healthy Roar staffers and I would like to ask you some questions about football, mental health, and the pandemic. How were you most affected by the pandemic?
Well, I think the majority of us, or at least a lot of people that I know, you know, it was so much more than just a pandemic, right? We had all of the things that happened in 2020, plus all of the things that just go on in life. So many people, had to deal with the social unrest and all of the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery things that we had to see. A lot of us were dealing with family members and close ones that passed away, either through natural causes or, from COVID-19. And so, and we're dealing with being in isolation a lot. I know even for my kids, having to adjust to going to school virtually, being away from their friends or family for an extended amount of time. And for me, I think that was a little bit tough, just especially the isolation to deal with that much and have to kind of be by yourself is a unique storm that I think we all had to deal with. But, I was definitely included in that number.
Can you describe any new healthy habits you started to help you cope with the pandemic?
Yeah, one of the things that I had to start doing to cope during the pandemic was to really be intentional about doing things that I enjoy, right? Things that make me happy that I can do by myself, essentially. So I picked up a camera and started doing some photography and watching some videos on how, to get really good with the camera. So that's been something that I think has been healthy for me. Something, again, I can do kind of by myself. It's a creative outlet for me, something I enjoy doing, and helps me raise my mood, when, inevitably, I hit any kind of low.
What has the pandemic taught you? What lessons have you learned from living through the pandemic that might help you and others in the future?
I think, there were a lot of lessons that I think needed to be learned, even from just what you think you need in life, right? When you sit still and you're not as caught up, in all of the hustle and bustle of every day, you start to realize, how little time you spend with, your loved ones, how much time you waste, on social media, how much time, you start to be really conscious about how you spend your time now that you have a little bit more of it. But I think some of the biggest lessons I learned, again, was how important it is to prioritize those people that you love. A lot of people lost friends or had friends that got sick, but for me, it was the time away that made me be a lot more intentional about, being a better son to my parents, checking in on them, making sure that they're good. Even being a father and having kids that don't live with me full time, having to be very, very intentional. So I think how to manage time is probably, I thought I was really good at it before, but I think COVID gave me an opportunity to really prioritize what is important in my life and make my time and effort reflect that.
Has the pandemic affected your mental health? What do you do to cope in a healthy way with stress and anxiety?
Yeah, so I was somebody who already was dealing with stress and anxiety before 2020. And so when you had the pandemic hit and everything else that came with it, it definitely took my anxiety to another level. And so one of the things that I was already doing and had to do even more was talking with my therapist is the first thing. So I talk to a therapist every week. Even getting my kids into talking to somebody as well was a priority for me, or at least helped. One of the ways that I try to cope. Like I said before, picking up habits or learning new skills that I enjoy doing. So whether it was taking time to read books or explore music, to watch films, to photography. All of these things are things that I enjoy doing that I oftentimes don't get a lot. I don't get enough time to do. But during the pandemic, I've learned to prioritize doing the things that I enjoy just because they raise your mood. They help lift you out of kind of some of those low moments in life. And then being around people you love always has helped me, again, kind of get through some of those low points.
How do you overcome your anxiety and depression? Who or what helps you persevere?
Yeah, I think the main person who's helped me through times of depression and to deal with the anxiety that I have has been my therapist. And not only do I have somebody that I can express kind of these feelings to, but really having the tools to equip me in all the other moments, right? When I'm, at work or I'm with my family and these things come up. So having tools to be able to, think about in the moment, is this something that I want to say? Is this something that needs to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Do I have control over this? And if it's something that I don't have control over, then being able to release my worry or anxiety around that thing. Having other people that I can call on, whenever, I got questions that's not my therapist. So I have a support group. These are all tools that were given to me by my therapist and somebody that I really lean on heavily to not only be able to just talk to, but to give me the tools so that when I'm dealing with these things away from, my therapist, I can still cope and recover and get through some of these moments.
Can you tell us how going to therapy makes you feel better? What does your therapist do that is helpful?
Yeah, I think, most people feel better when they don't feel like they're alone in whatever they're going through. And a lot of times, I know for me at least, when I get depressed or I get anxious, I tend to isolate myself, right? I don't want to be around people, but then I'm stuck dealing with all of the things I got in my mind, by myself. And oftentimes, if you're not in the right state of mind, listening to yourself isn't always the best thing to do. So, being able to have people that I know I can call on has always been a huge, deal for me. Ever since I really started focusing on how I'm taking care of my mind and my spirit, you need other people to be able to lean on, to have safe spaces. All of those things to me have been really important.
What advice do you have kids who may be struggling with anxiety or depression to help them overcome these kinds of mental health challenges?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is don't be ashamed of it. Oftentimes, I think we like I said, we feel alone, so therefore we kind of feel ashamed that we're depressed or that we have anxiety. And that shame sometimes comes from people not necessarily understanding how to notice it in you either. So the biggest thing is you can't blame yourself. Know that it's a very normal thing. There are so many people that are dealing with it, and so you're not alone in that regard. But the only way really to kind of move through it is to ask for help and seek out either adults or a counselor. But asking for help is really probably the hardest part, but the most important part of that process, because you allow people to really see what you're going on and you share what you're dealing with. Holding it in by yourself is really hard to do, and especially as a kid, if you don't have the right perspective to put everything in. You haven't lived enough life. So having somebody, especially an adult, that you can that can give you perspective, that can help you feel seen and heard is very important.
We read that you produced a film called Black Boys. Why was it important to you to make this film? What do you want kids and grown-ups to learn from watching it?
Well, yeah, I got on the project for Black Boys because I thought the story in and of itself is important to tell. I think a lot of the times we see in our education system, we see in our justice system. Black boys oftentimes get treated like adults and get handled like adults. And what we oftentimes don't talk about is the humanity of Black boys, how Black boys are smart, are creative, are that they smile, that they come from good families, that they have good intentions, that they have dreams. You know, all of these things we sometimes leave out of the conversation when we're talking about Black boys. And what that does is it doesn't give people the ability to see you, to see us as human beings. And so I think more of those stories need to be told. You know, you two as Black boys should be able to look, you know, at a screen and see reflections of, you know, people who look like you, people who act like you, who come from the same backgrounds, who have success, who have dreams, who are creative, and not all of the narratives or the same things that we see over and over and over again. So that was why it was important for me, because I wanted Black boys and girls who watched it to look at it and see themselves and know that they have the right to be who they are, no matter, you know, what. And no matter what the world tells you, you have the right to be recognized fully as a human being, that you have your full rights to citizenship in this country, and you shouldn't take anything less because you don't deserve anything less. And for anybody else who's watching it to also see that value in Black children, that you guys are worthy to be invested in, that you guys don't need savers. You just need people who believe in you and are willing to make that investment, knowing that you guys have something to offer.
During the pandemic, when you were playing football, how did it feel not to have your fans there to watch you play?
It was really weird at first. You know, the first few games we didn't have any fans except for maybe a few family members were there, and it was the first time that I heard. You know, I've played football since the 4th grade. I just finished my 12th year in the NFL, and it was the first time I heard the gears from the goalpost when they raised the net, when getting ready to kick a field goal, they raised the net behind the goalpost. I could hear the gears squeaking, and I never heard that before because the stadiums have never been that quiet. So you start hearing some new sounds. It makes the game a little bit easier because you get to hear all of the communication from the other team. So you know you can get some tips without the crowd noise, but I was glad that fans started to come, or we were able to allow fans in as the season went along. It started to feel a little bit more like normal by the time we got to December and the playoffs. But I'm definitely looking forward to getting fans fully back into the stadiums and kind of getting the sense of normalcy that we're used to.
How has the pandemic affected the way you play football?
I wouldn't say that the pandemic has necessarily changed the way that I play football, but it has changed the way I've had to prepare for it. Our off season, you know, has changed completely. So last year, you know, we're usually together between April and June as a team, you know, working out, training, and doing practicing. So not having that, you know, was different. Having to be, you know, get in shape by yourself, but also having gyms, you know, that were closed. So I was working out, you know, at home. And so having to get in shape to be ready for training camp while training at home was unique. But then even once we got into the building, as we follow all of the protocols, you know, where we can't even be in the same meeting room together. So we're meeting literally out on the football field with chairs. All of those things, you know, make preparing for the game different. But when we step on the field, you know, the rules are the same. The game is the same as when I was your guys' age.
This is not a question, but last year in 2020, my team, the North Philly Blackhawks, were known as champions for 9 years. We got rings
Congrats.
and jackets. Do you mind if I show you the ring because I have it on me right now?
Yeah, let me see what you got.
Here it is.
Your ring is damn near as good as mine. Okay.
It has a star on this side. It says my nickname and my number 43.
What's your nickname?
Steph.
Steph. Okay. What
Oh,
position you play?
I play. Last year I played defensive back and wide receiver.
Okay.
Oh no, defensive back and running back.
Okay. Cool.
And I got one touchdown on the championship game.
There you go.
Look
Congrats.
at the top.
I like it. It looks a lot like I won a championship in high school in Piscataway, New Jersey, and my ring looked a lot like that.
I have a question I made up myself. What is
Okay.
one fail you made in the NFL that you regret the most?
I failed a lot in the NFL. I don't know if I regret any of them, to be honest. I think, yeah, I feel like every mistake that you make is just on the path to, who the finished project or who you will be, who the finished product will be. For me, my entire, journey has been, or my entire career has been one long journey. And I can look at, there are some games that I had, especially when I was younger in my career, that I didn't play well and aren't really and aren't really proud about. But I also had I've had moments where I look back on those games and those moments and I can learn from them. And I know, okay, how to prevent those things from happening again. And in bigger games and in bigger situations, those failures have made me better. And I found myself very prepared for, some really, really big moments in my own career. And so, I've learned to realize that life is a journey, right? That is going to be full of mistakes, that are going to be full of setbacks. The only thing we're responsible for is what our response is to those. If you never learn from your mistakes, you're probably doomed to, to redoing them and to reoffending and repeating them. And so, you got to learn from mistakes and not be afraid of them, to own them and enjoy learning the lessons.
Which fail in the NFL has helped you the most?
I think leadership has probably been the thing I've learned the most. I've been on some really good teams and some really bad ones. But I think I've learned more from the really bad ones. One year, and I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I think in 2012, the defense I was on gave up more yards than any team in the history of the NFL, which means that we were the worst defense in NFL history. And I learned a lot about leadership in that year, about not only the good things about leadership, but how bad leadership works, and how even once your leadership gives up, right? If you don't have quality leadership, that's still where your team is going to go. So if you have bad leaders, it's hard to have a good team or a good organization, and that's from coaches, that's from captains, all the way down. And so a lesson I've learned on every team, not only football, but in business, in anything, when you're creating a team, you have to make sure that you start with very strong leadership, because that's really the direction that your organization is going to go. There are plenty of bad ideas with really good teams that have been really good, that have had a ton of success, and a ton of great, brilliant ideas and products that have gone away and failed because the teams have very poor leadership. So I think that's the biggest thing, biggest failure that I've learned, is being part of something that was, that I'm not proud of being part of. Changed the way I saw, leadership.
Here's my last question. How did it feel to lead the Eagles in 2018?
Oh, I mean, it felt amazing. I knew what it meant for the city, and to be to be a captain on that team, to bring that was very fulfilling for me, at least. I love Philly. I love my time here. and still live here. So to be able to do it that year, and then the way we did it with the story behind it, losing Carson Wentz and Nick Foles comes in, everybody kind of ruling us out, and the whole underdog theme. It was just so much going on at that point in time. To be able to bring that home was significant, and I had a ton of fun doing it. So and it's still a moment that brings people a lot of joy. And I'm just happy and proud and grateful that I was a part of it.